We need to dispel a myth, and that's that the capitalist private sector drives innovation while the public sector and the government stifle it. Because this is worn-out propaganda that is patently false. Oh, but the United States had the greatest technological advances the world has ever seen and became the greatest economic superpower on the planet thanks to free market capitalism. No, it didn't. It did that in spite of capitalism. Capitalism has actually hindered innovation and growth every step of the way. And this is because private industry has but one goal, and that is maximizing profits. And in the course of maximizing profits, you try to spend as little as possible on research and development because innovation's fucking expensive. Oh yeah? Well, what about the iPhone you're recording this on that Steve Jobs personally invented in his garage with absolutely no help from the government whatsoever, I was told one time and blindly believe. He didn't actually invent it in his garage, or really at all. The US government did. Like, all of the technology that makes an iPhone was R&D'd and produced by the US government. Well, what about their fancy cameras? Yeah, the image sensors that make single lens reflex cameras possible, the stuff that's on pretty much any personal electronic that has a camera, developed by NASA for a satellite in 1992. Well, what about the revolutionary touchscreen? Yep, it was revolutionarily designed at the University of Delaware, a public institution, with funding from the CIA and the NFS by a doctoral student who would go on to create a touchscreen company called Fingerworks that was purchased by Apple. Yep, Apple didn't innovate that. They bought that innovation we already paid for with our tax dollars so they could sell it back to us at $1,000 a piece. The technology that would become Siri was developed with $22 million in DARPA funding that once again Apple just bought the blueprints for. And when she's reading you directions on how to get to Taco Bell, she's doing that from the GPS system that is entirely built, owned, and operated by the US military. When she tells you what the weather's going to be through the weather app, she's accessing free National Weather Service data, the same free government data that all weather apps use, data that's gathered using Doppler radar that was a system once again developed with NSF funding in 1945. Then when you tilt your phone to play video games or look around at 360-degree virtual views of things, you can do that thanks to the accelerometers that were in there developed by the US military. First example of a lithium-ion battery that powers all of our electronics and makes the iPhone possible, developed by NASA in 1965. Literally the whole phone is just a bunch of government-developed technology that Apple purchased, stuck into a single package, and then sold back to us. And it's not just phones. Tesla, pretty much all the tech in it, same thing. And even the tech that Tesla has developed, it has developed with nearly $5 billion in government funding. And it's not just that kind of technology. Modern prosthetics that lets a legless vet run marathons. That's the US government. Microwaves, MRIs that let you know if you have a brain tumor. And not just that, pretty much all of the technology in a hospital and most of the vaccines. Almost every advancement in aerospace. Pretty much all of our infrastructure that makes our world work, from roads and bridges to power lines and phone lines and all of the fiber optic cable that's getting laid in the ground. All of it has been done, at least in part, with government funding, government technology, and government research. Because you can really only accomplish these kinds of innovations when there's no profit motive. Because a lot of these things you may never see a profit on, or you can't commodify efficiently. Do you know what happens to innovation when there's a profit motive? Thomas Edison happens. And that's bad, okay? See, because when the government wants innovation, they say, this is our end goal. We want to put a man on the moon. We want a supersonic jet. We want a vaccine to help people live with HIV or prevent HPV. We want interstate infrastructure that efficiently connects the entire country. Would have been nice if they included rail, but you know, they did that too before cars, and I just wish they would have kept up with it. But nonetheless, we want to split the atom. We want to provide electricity to the south, tame the Colorado, you know, you name it. If the government sets its mind to it, it gets done. And it gets done because profit isn't the motivating factor, and that frees them up to hire the best people to work together to solve those problems. And it gives them the checkbook to accomplish those goals without worrying about how much they can give back to shareholders. And in the process of going after those goals, if one approach or technology proves better than another to achieve it, you just go with the better technology or approach, like they did with the atom bomb program. Or on the other hand, you can have privatized competing entities like Thomas Edison or Nikola Tesla, both working towards the same goal of electrifying the world, one using his own genius and the other stealing the genius's ideas. And when it came down to Nikola Tesla's superior AC power versus Edison's DC power, instead of just going with the superior power and moving forward with the best technology, Edison did everything in his power to sabotage it. He even went as far as electrocuting elephants with AC power to try to show that it was dangerous. He did that because his motive was not getting the best technology out there, it was his own profit. Now imagine how much innovation got stifled and killed as a result when Tesla died a lonely, penniless man. And how much more advanced the world would be today if the government just fully funded Tesla and all the scientists and engineers whose ideas Edison was stealing to work towards a common goal. But that's just one example, because companies don't spend their money on innovation. They spend it on killing their competitors' innovations so it doesn't threaten their profit margins. They spend it on lobbying against government regulations and government funding of new technologies that would threaten their bottom line and force them to innovate. All of our technological advances and innovation have been achieved in spite of private sector capitalism, not because of it. And the only time the private sector ever seems to actually innovate is when the government pays them to do so. But even then, they're always trying to figure out how they can spend as few of those funds on innovation as possible so they can pocket as much as they can. And anytime you find inefficiencies in government, you can almost always blame that on capitalism as well. Because pretty much all of that comes back to big businesses lobbying for more bloated budgets they can suck off the teat of. And then people like the former CEOs of Halliburton, Dick Cheney, writing policies that help companies like Halliburton and giving away no big contracts to companies like Halliburton. And starting wars that particularly benefit companies like Halliburton. Because the enemy of efficiency and innovation is profit. And the only thing that private sector capitalism does efficiently is funnel the most amount of profit with the least amount of work into the fewest number of pockets. Now, that being said, well-regulated free market capitalism that fosters competition is absolutely great for non-essential markets. The government can't fund or foresee every need. So for things like TVs and video games and restaurants and automobiles, and you have dozens of firms out there competing to snag a share of that consumer market, you end up with a lot of great products at affordable prices. But when they've all conglomerated into monopolies, that goes away. And that's when you get inflation and price gouging and poor product quality and customer service. That's what we have now in late-stage capitalism. And the private sector never works when it comes to situations where people need to be prioritized over profit. Healthcare, education, housing, food. And that's why the United States is struggling so much when it comes to all of those things, because profit replaces and displaces people quite literally. So the next time somebody tells you that the government is bloated and inefficient and all it does is stifle private sector innovation, you can tell them that the only thing the private sector does efficiently is come up with new and innovative ways to stifle both the public and private sector.